in a season of weeping as we walk. I love the thought, carrying, literally sowing in tears, and will weep with joy as they carry this seed with tears. So this whole picture of when you are in tears carrying a seed, don't stop walking. Keep walking, and don't we all have to continue pushing forward.
Welcome once again to the Gary Wilkerson Podcast. So glad you're with us. We're thrilled to have with us today Pastor Claude Houde, pastor of an amazing church, touching hundreds of other churches around Canada, touching thousands of churches in the French-speaking world. Many African nations are French-speaking. He's done crusades, conferences, and planted churches in all these nations, in France, in Paris, and other places around the world. He's the author of 5 books. He's starting his 6th book. We're talking about Joseph. We're talking about dreams. We're talking about believing God for miracles. We're talking about desires that God puts within our heart. And we're talking about them in ways that are not mixed with a pagan culture of personal ambitions, desires for self-glory, self-acclaim, or materialism, prosperity, those type of things. These dreams are God's dreams. These are dreams about touching lives, about raising a godly family, dreams about living wholeheartedly for God. These are the dreams that are really the most important ones. Pastor Claude Houde, who's with us here today, is going to share some things. I know you're going to want to listen, and I want to invite you to subscribe to the Gary Wilkerson Podcast, and also to check out our website, worldchallenge.org. We have other sermons, some of mine, some of Pastor Claude's, the other content there, some bookstore that some of the ministry books that we've been promoting over the years are available to you. And if you like these episodes, please share them with a friend as well. Look forward to talking now to Pastor Claude Houde. Talk about some new things that are on your heart. It will come out in the form of a book. You and I both know before anything's a book, it's a burning passion. It's a fire shut up in our bones. And so you have something coming out in September. This podcast will air just a little bit before that, so people could be aware that. Just start off with the title of the book. Do you have a title yet, or is there a working title?
Yes, the working title is God's Dream for You, and it's a book on the life of Joseph in the Old Testament. Okay, and it's from Psalms. The root of it is from Psalm 126. Is that right? Well, it's a start off. Psalm 126 is a song. It's a psalm who speaks about. The words are beautiful. When the Lord brought us back from captivity, we were like those who dream. And then when you go through the psalm, I saw in that psalm, it's an introduction to the life of Joseph, and to all of us pursuing God's dream, God's plan, God's destiny for our lives. But when you look at Psalm 126, I found some parallels that are even to for such a time as this. When you think in terms of we came out of captivity, but we were singing. Psalms 126, he says, when the Lord brought us back from captivity in Zion, we were like those who dream. And it's a season of worship through war. They're coming back from captivity. And we're all coming out of the pandemic captivity. We're all coming out of a season of captivity. But as we came out, and not totally out, but coming out of the pandemic, we're coming into a season of what's taking place in the Ukraine, of rumors of war and of world war at a level that our generation had not seen. So there's a season of worship through war, and also a season of, I love the thought in Psalm 126 of weeping as we walk.
Sorry to interrupt you. It's so rude of me to do that, but let me read it first, the whole chapter, so those who are listening can get the whole context, and then we can take, because it sounds like you're going to help us look at some verses. But let me just go. It's such a powerful chapter. I think if we read the whole thing, then we can go back and so it says, when the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dream. Then our mouths were filled with laughter and our tongues with shouts of joy. Then they said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us. We are glad. Restore our fortunes, O Lord, like the strings of Negba. Those who sow in tears shall reap with shouts of joy. He who goes out weeping, bearing seeds of sowing, shall come home with shouts of joy, bringing in his sheaves with him. Okay, thanks. So, thanks for letting me interrupt you, and go right back to your point, because that was a good one.
Well, Well, I just find it so powerful that coming out of captivity, it's a season, and I think that's what the body of Christ is right now, in a season of where we're in a deeper way than ever. We've learned to worship through war, and it's a season also in a paradox of worldwide witness, because he says they will say of you in the nations, look at how great things God has done for them. For us here in New Life in Montreal, Nouvelle Vie, the paradox of the pandemic is we went online, and here we were 18, 19 months out of 24 months where the church doors were closed, where we couldn't meet, which was unfathomable to us. But yet, going online the way we did, we began the pandemic with 10,000 followers on our YouTube chain, and we come out of the pandemic with 135,000, and people from all over the world. So there's a season for the body of Christ to shine worldwide in the middle of all this, and a season of weeping as we walk. I love the thought, carrying, literally sowing in tears, and will weep with joy as they carry this seed with tears. So this whole picture of, when you are in tears carrying a seed, don't stop walking. Keep walking, and don't we all have to continue pushing forward, and many times sowing in tears, but I have to continue walking. So I love the idea of weeping as we walk.
And what do you mean by that? Like, can you give me an example of somebody who's going through some weeping time, and what do you mean by the seed, carrying the seed too? Can you elaborate on those?
Well, it might be parents that are carrying a seed of faith for their children, for sons and daughters, but you're weeping, but don't stop walking.
I got you.
Keep going forward. Keep pushing forward as you have that seed of faith and of prayer. And it might be for your family, for your marriage. It might be for your children. It might be, this pandemic, everybody in 2020 thought we have a pretty good plan of what's coming. Look at us, Gary. We had about 6 trips planned in detail all over the world, and so the plans are blown away, are blown up. But you have a seed. Keep walking. Everything that God, and that to me is an amazing prelude to the life of Joseph, because he had as he was weeping is right, and weeping we will do. There's a time, but don't stop walking is my idea. Is the thought. Just keep carrying the seed through the weeping.
And that would be for your church. This example you gave as well. You could stop walking. Oh, our doors are closed. We can't do anything, and you sort of spent 18 months in depression, but instead you kept walking with that seed, and God planted it, and it gave then you could say, "Great, Lord has done great things for us." As a result of that, if you'd have stopped walking, verse 3 there, "The Lord has done great things for us," would probably not quite be said. So that's powerful.
Yeah, God's dream is only greater as we continue sowing in tears and walking, and allow Him to change us, challenge us, grow us, prune us, to complete the work that He's beginning us. And I believe that in those seasons that you're in tears, but you're continuing sowing and continuing walking are the season. That's what, again, the life of Joseph so amazingly shows. As you continue pursuing God, I write in the book, and I love the thought that don't follow your dream, follow your God, and your dream will follow you.
That's right.
That's one of the key thought of the book.
Yeah.
I've heard Joseph preach many times as, you had your dream, stick to it, fight for it. It's your dream. It's my dream. It's my... No, follow your God and let Him work His every day of your life, and every step and every season. And your dream, God's true dream for you, will follow you.
Yeah, and that sometimes can be very different. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think, people that follow our ministry here at World Challenge, if we were just to say what we've said so far, and it be filtered through the lens of much of the American Christian culture, people would be thinking, oh, Gary and Claude are talking about, I have a dream for the mansion, I have a dream for the multi-billion-dollar business, I have a dream for the new Cadillac, but you're talking about God's dream for us, which is oftentimes very different. And if we just preach and just strive for a self-created dream, maybe even a fleshly dream, it's going to take us down the wrong road. But if we have the eyes fixed on God first, He's going to take us down a much better road. And sometimes, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, sometimes, I was just thinking, in some senses, you might could say, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane sort of got a little bit of a dream in his heart, like, hey, it'd be nice if this cup passes. That's a pretty good dream. But then he says, like, exactly what you're saying. No, but I see God first. I see my Father first. So I see the cross being necessary. So my dream is to go now to the cross. My dream is to suffer because I know the weeping of that is going to bring the joy of as Hebrews says, many sons and daughters. These are your children. So our dream could be a dream of not necessarily everything being successful and everything being delightful and everything being easy, but everything with an outcome of glory and victory and honor of God. And so that I think we're both saying that, aren't we?
And yes, and obviously the materialistic aspect that you mentioned at first, or the success and careers but I'm taking it even deeper and joining you in the thought about Gethsemane, even in our spiritual dreams, even in the things that we think we should be doing for God and for the kingdom, oftentimes the biggest obstacle to what God is really doing is when our dream for ourselves, even in ministry, has become the idol.
Yeah.
Has become, unless God does this through me, well, everything is shut. Everything is stopped. So the life of Joseph teaches us so many things, that the trials and tests actually transform us for what God is really preparing. I think your audience are familiar with the life of Joseph, and when he has his original sets of dreams, he has three sets of two dreams with his brothers in Potiphar's house, and then with Pharaoh, and through each of them, when he has the original dreams, he's seeing his brothers around him and his family, and they're bowing to him. And he might be thinking just in terms of, I'm going to lead this house. My dad's going to lead this to me, and they're going to stop persecuting me, or they're going to. But God's purposes was for him to actually save a nation. It was so beyond what he had thought, and what was really beyond what we had thought is the road God would take him through to get there. Mm-hmm. He gets it at 17. There's over 20 years that go through. And in each step, there's nothing like what he had seen. He has the favor of the Lord, but everything keeps falling apart. And I love the thought where Paul even says, he asked the Galatians, did you suffer in vain? One of the great things that Joseph teaches us and warns us is, don't suffer in vain. In the seasons of suffering, there are things God is building in you. You could actually go through suffering in vain, because if you fall into self-pity, you fall into a stubbornness. This is not what I had in mind. This is not what and you could lose. I've known people that are just in ministries. You just suffer and suffer, but never God's purpose is being allowed to take fruition in their lives. One time I was sitting, I only had the privilege one time to sit at a table, 4 or 5 of us with Rick Warren, and we were all allowed to ask him one question, and I was trying to make my question count, and I asked him. At that point, we had a couple of thousand people in our church, and I said, I have 2,000 people and 2,000 challenges and problems, and you have tens of thousands. And the thing he said to me was so powerful. He said, don't waste that. The thing I would tell you the most would, don't waste your suffering. And then he started to be very open about some of the sufferings in his own home and lives and families, and how through these sufferings God was just doing his purpose, preparing, just like Joseph, step by step by step. Joseph's background is horrific. His family background is horrific and violent, and the home he grew in was totally dysfunctional. But his very name, Joseph, means God added to my life, and God was molding him and developing him. And Rick Warren actually says, that's his first criteria. I will not hire somebody who has not suffered. He says, no matter what qualifications they have, he says that's the first question we ask. If you haven't suffered, you're no good to us. We need people that have gone through the suffering and the molding and the understanding that the delays are not denials. They're used by God to deepen you and to develop you for the destinies prepared for you. That's one of the many, many highlights of Joseph's life in my view.
I think that's a very important message, very important for us to hear. I would say to you, Claude, it's important for me to hear this right now, because I think I tend to over-respond to the cultural norms of much of the church today, which is, go get your dreams, whatever you believe, just name it and claim it type stuff. That is so pervasive here. I think the pendulum, as I hear you say this, I'm getting a bit challenged in a good way, because I think I've almost shut down that dream part of my heart. You know what I mean? Just almost saying I'm just going to love Jesus. I'm going to read the Word. If he tells me to preach a sermon, I'm going to preach a sermon. If he tells me to go to a conference, I'm going to go to a conference. If he tells me to help the poor people who need some food in Haiti, I'm going to do that. But I don't necessarily think in terms very much of dreaming now. And I'm wondering if a lot of people are that way, who have, rightfully rejected the hyper faith and prosperity movement of, and some of it's watered down too. It's not that real extreme, name and claim it. It's a little bit more subtle. But so you go to church every Sunday, and every Sunday here, you can do it. You just believe in yourself. Just if you're down, pick yourself up. And so I think a lot of us then, who I would pray would be more grounded in the Word and more sober about the things of God, and are not engaging this in a self-centered fashion, would, if we're not careful, we're going to reject that. As soon as you said, because I know Joseph had a heart after God. He loved God, and that's where I could land. But I like what you said. Joseph actually had a dream that wasn't like, Joseph, here's your dream. I'm God, and look at me, and love me, and be my friend. It was an actionable dream. It was something he had to engage in. It was something that was a call on his life, not above his walk with God, but a part of his walk with God. So I just wanted to say that, man. Thank you for challenging my heart.
The Proverbs 29:18 has been so abused. Where there is no vision or hazon or dream or revelation, the people perish, or the people cast off restraint. That's Proverbs 29:18. And you're absolutely right. It has been taken almost as a success tip, and we have millions of Christians who said that's my vision, and I'm pursuing that and that only. But it's something deep that said, though, when there is no vision, the people cast off restraint. So in every I'm speaking even as a man of as ministry, as people serving God. If there's no sense in this season of my life, of faith and of confidence and of a purpose for this season, of of a sense of this is what I'm called to do at this point of my life, and I have a vision for this, and this is the next step. There's a danger. There's a casting off restraint. There's and to me, that sense of vision is not it really isn't a matter of age. It's a matter of attitude. It's an attitude of the heart. It's really not even how much theology I have or what my great testimonies have been in the past, but it's a thirst for this present season. Now, I just turned 60. I know you're shocked because I'm so much younger, yes. But I know your audience is just right now in shock. But I just turned 60, 40 some years of service and of ministry. And I say this with a gripped heart and with great sense of humility before God. But in the last 2-3 years, we saw some of the most well-known, most impacting, fruitful ministries come out with testimonies that brought shame, that brought hurt, that fall away, and I can't help. And I know these men were men that for years had a pulsating heart for God and just wanted to, and God gave them some of the greatest revelations, some of the best apologetics teachers in the world, or builder of churches, and in all this happening, great movements in the kingdom right now seem to be shaken at their core by some behavior that's unthinkable to us. But I know somewhere along the line they were in ministry, but lost a sense of this is what's next for me. And men in their 50s and 60s and 70s and even 40s and more have that danger. When there's no vision, there's a possibility of casting off some restraint.
Wow.
Some of our standards, it has to be that, because how could they have come to start with for 20, 30 years of such powerful ministry and end up acting and behaving in things that are just completely contrary to everything they taught before. At one point, the vision diminishing for what I'm doing now, the resting on what I did before, and also the woundedness of what was not accomplished, what was not fulfilled, what I thought would and has not in my own life, my own family, my own kids, in my own ministry, and the woundedness takes over, and then they cast off restraint. So that's why the constant pursuing of verses we know well, Jeremiah 29:11-13, God says, I know the thoughts that I have for you, the dreams, the thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope. But then you'll call on me and pray to me, and I will listen to you. And as you will seek me and find me, you'll search me with all your heart. That's often seen almost as a verse for the beginning of your Christian life. But I believe that seeking, that searching has to be in every season of our lives, that God has a vision for me for this season, not what I'd planned, and certainly not in my timetable or my chronology of things. And this is when I thought I would be, this is where I'd be at 30 and then 40 and 50 and at 60. And this is how God's going to do it. Well, none of that, newsflash for the young ones watching, none of that happens in any way, shape or form, like you think. But in every season, if I seek him, in every season I pursue him with all my heart, in every season he has a plan, in every season he has something for me now to accomplish towards his great fulfillment for every season of my life.
I couldn't agree more. That's so powerful. I think there's when you look at a ladder, it has the two side frames and then the bars that go across that you step on. And I think the Holy Spirit and faithfulness is what empowers us to walk up to the accomplishments, to the fulfillments of the dreams, because there's some requirement on our part for our dreams. It's not just going to fall in our lap. There has to be an ascension into the things God has for us. But I would say the two side parts of that ladder would be exactly what you're saying. Joseph actually had a dream. It had something to do about a nation and providing for his family. But the other side was the vision that keeps you from being unrestrained. These ministries, these organizations that are struggling and shaking right now didn't have that sense of the other part of the vision. So like a quick little story. I don't know if I ever told you this or not before, Claude. I know we've spent a lot of time together. I probably told you every story I know, but when I was 12, my father had gone up. He came home. He said, I've been last 2 days up on a mountaintop. I'm not sure. We were living in New York, so it must have been in Pennsylvania or something. He said, I was up on a mountaintop praying for all four of my kids. And he had to sit down in a circle, and he came around, he put his hand on our heads, and he said, wow. And he said, here is God's dream for you. Here is God's promise for you. And for my sisters, he said, you're going to marry and be engaged in missions and in ministry and touch many lives. For my brother, he said, you're going to be an amazing evangelist with the ability to communicate God's truth. And then he put his hand on my head. He said, and God's going to keep you. And I was like, oh man, that's a ripoff. It just felt so like a worldwide evangelist and touching nations, and I read it as I'll barely be kept. I hope you can make it. But God will help you. You'll survive. But now I look back on that, and that other rung of the ladder is when I see these other ministries falling apart. Now I look at it and go like, He kept me all these years in this Word. He kept me on my knees. He kept me with a fresh fire in my heart. He kept me with a vision for the lost. He kept me with a hunger to see America revived and a spiritual awakening. He kept that dream alive. Really, is the dream I had, when I was a kid to preach the gospel. And so, man, I'm really thankful for a dream to move ahead, but then the providence of God to keep us empowered to move ahead. Claude, we're gonna take a break, and we're gonna come back. I want to follow up on this because there's so many more important things I know you have to say, and what you've been saying. If it's touching anybody's heart like it's touching mine, this is gonna really reap a lot of fruit in people's lives. You're okay to join us again on the next episode?
Absolutely.
All right, great. Thanks, Claude.
Each week, this podcast reaches thousands of listeners. This critical work is made possible by the generous contributions of individuals like you who believe in World Challenge's mission. Thank you for listening and supporting World Challenge, transforming lives through the message and mission of Jesus Christ.